Our next segment is going to be overrated and underrated. And believe it or not, Notre Dame is not on this list this week. That's right. New season, new list. So we're going to go ahead and start out with Colorado, who upset number 17 TCU. Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are absolutely insane. I mean, I think it was 116 yards from Travis Sanders, as well as an interception in that game, making big plays in that game for sure. Heisman watch alert.
Dude played over 80 snaps. He played over 80 snaps, and Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, he got 505 yards, the most of any Colorado quarterback in one game.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Isaac, what do you think?
So I'm going to say this. TCU is a team who, number one, lost their quarterback. Number two, they retained roughly half of their offensive roster. Now, that said, they still put up 42 points. What I'm going to say to you is that it was a typical Big 12 game. There was no defense. That's why they put up 45. And listen, I'm just excited to see Travis Hunter play against, when they go to Eugene here in a few weeks, to play against the Ducks. And really, honestly, when they play USC, I believe it's the week after that. That will be the test. And listen, Dion, I think he's changed the culture. I was wrong. Y'all can clown me all night. But what I'm going to say to you is that we'll see what happens.
I think Isaac's right. I think we absolutely will see what happens. I think that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, like you said, they freaking balled out. It was a great game. Me and Joey argued to Isaac last week that Dion was going to change the culture there. They said he couldn't do it that way. He said, you can't kick everybody out and then get 64 transfers in and, create a football team off that. Well, prime time is happening, baby, whether y'all like it or not.
So I think it's safe to say that we all agree that Colorado is very much underrated. Next up, we got Georgia. Not a great start against an FCS opponent. Only 17 first half points, which is a little weird. Okay, not the same offense as last year. Still won by 41 points though. Okay, nothing crazy. Again, new offense. Same typical Georgia defense though. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I think that Georgia is right where they should be right now. Maybe there's an argument for overrated right now for the offensive side. We'll see how it goes. Brock Bowers is still a beast, a monster on the offensive end. We'll see how that goes. But we're just going to go ahead and, Mason, you're the Georgia guy.
Well, it's like you said, right? I mean, we are a little bit, I think we're right where we are. We did have some of those first half issues, but I think something that not a lot of people are talking about is, we still got over 500 yards of offense in this game. We were definitely stalled out a little bit in the first half. You have Kendall Milton, who's still recovering from a hamstring injury at running back. We have Branson Robinson. He tore his meniscus or something, so he's out for the season. That's our second string back, so we're getting, Muse in there, Nick Muse. We have a brand new quarterback. We have a brand new offensive coordinator. So I think that, and Ladd McConkey was out too, one of our best wide receivers. And you have Dominic Lovett, the transfer from Mizzou, and Ra Thomas, the transfer from Mississippi State at receiver, and they're brand new to the office, right? So I think it's a lot of people just learning the scheme and, learning their position and their part in the offense. I think that that's what it comes down to. So right now, I'm with you. I think Georgia is right where they need to be, but I don't think we stay there. I think we become underrated pretty soon.
Well, here's the thing. It's kind of hard to pit the two-time back-to-back defending champions, the reigning national champions for the past two seasons, going on a three-peat, and say, well, are they overrated or underrated against an FCS opponent? Now, with that said, I would agree. I think Georgia's right where they should be. Given the fact that the injuries they had, they're still trying to find this new system. Like Mason said, new OC, new quarterback. They're trying to find their rhythm. I think they are where they should be. I think it was just a slow start. That's not the first time in the past two seasons we've seen Georgia start slow against a subpar opponent. I believe it was against Georgia Tech last year where they really had a slow first half. And it's like, they'll be okay. I think they're right where they should be, but I believe, again, also like what Mason said, very soon they could very well be underrated depending on how they start out against conference play.
And something else I'll mention extremely quickly is that I think that our coaching is what sets us apart from a lot of other teams. Like last year, we're down 13 points in Como against Missouri, And what do we do with like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter? We overcome that deficit and we win by 4. So I think that our coaching too is really what sets us apart. And Kirby's coaching this year. He's mad. I saw him. He was mad in the first half. He did not like that they only put up 17 points. So I think that, like I said, it's going to come down to coaching. He's still a great coach. He's not Nick Saban. Look, and I've said this for a long time. He's not Nick Saban. He's Kirby Smart. He's building his own program. He's doing his own thing at Georgia. His success that came from Alabama, sure, you can say he piggybacks on that. It's where he learned a lot, but he's becoming his own program. He's building his own dynasty. It's becoming a monster in Athens, whether y'all like it or not. So,
we don't. It's okay.
Speaking of coaching, we're going to go ahead and combine these two together, Florida State and LSU, only because they were in the same game. Coaching-wise, Mike Norvell, he did incredible. He put a team together, finally, after a few years of Florida State having the rough end of the stick after Jameis Winston being drafted. And then on the other end, Brian Kelly, second year at LSU. I think I saw something somewhere saying Brian Kelly's has only like 2 or 3 wins against top 10 opponents or something like that. So, for me personally, I said this in the last episode, LSU was ranked high because, just how the first matchup went, LSU versus Florida State. But, for Florida State, I think, again, they're right where they should be. They're very talented, but there's still some things that I need to see from them, against other opponents and stuff. We're going to have the battle of the 2 Titans in the ACC coming up very soon, Florida State and Clemson. And then, LSU, it's arguable. They faced a really good opponent, but, can they come back from it? So I'm going to say that FSU is right where they should be. And just by a tiny little bit, I think from where LSU was previously at, they were very much overrated.
Yes, I'm going to plug here, and I'm going to say this. LSU was ranked I'm a huge Tigers fan, those of you that know. And LSU was ranked number 5 by and large because of the way they finished last season. They made the SEC title game, won the West in Brian Kelly's first year. They beat Bama in overtime in Death Valley. And all that said, Brian Kelly, what's up with it? That's the note we have on here. And here's the thing. I'd love to know. Because Brian Kelly's first line of his postgame presser was, apparently we're not the football team I thought we were. Brother, you had 9 months to prepare for one game against the same team. And we can talk about this. We can say, well, you know what? Listen, Florida State's better than they were last year. I agree with that 100%. Keon Coleman is a beast. Jordan Travis is fantastic. Jordan Travis threw 23 for 31 passing for 342 yards. Okay. Florida State was 9 for 14 on third down. Now, we could talk about, well, should LSU have rushed Harold Perkins, and could they have made a difference in those third down plays? Absolutely. Matt House failed. Brian Kelly, his mouth got way too big and said we're going to beat the heck out of them. And the fact that they didn't make adjustments in the secondary when Deuce Chestnut got lit up by Keon Coleman for like 2 touchdowns, 2 of his 3 touchdowns were against Deuce Chestnut. His other one was against Major Burns, who got majorly burnt, right? And after he got burnt, they switched Chestnut to him, who's 5'11". Keon's like 6'5". And 2 touchdowns later, it's like, well, this game's already over. What's the hurt? Listen, LSU was super overrated going into this past week. And I want us to beat Grambling in Tiger Stadium this coming weekend. It's the home opener. But here's the thing. We were way overrated. And honestly, I am just royally pissed.
Yeah,
I don't know how
it's
you're
not
gonna follow that, Mason.
I don't know either. I mean, I'm not the LSU fan here, so I got LSU as overrated right now. One of the firm beliefs on this podcast is that anybody can be overrated and underrated in the same season. A lot of the times it's going from underrated to overrated real quick, within a week usually. I believe that LSU still has some stuff that they can put together. Obviously, they're not out of it. They're still in the top 15. They can still make a run of the playoffs. They have to go undefeated and win the SEC championship now, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But right now, obviously, LSU, sorry, man, I got them overrated.
Don't be sorry. They are.
Fair enough. And just like we did with Florida State and LSU, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with Duke and Clemson. Duke, in the notes it says they won by 3 scores, but okay, Technically, they won by 2. The third one was garbage time. But yeah, Duke winning by 3 scores against my Clemson Tigers. The first win since 2004 against Clemson. And the biggest question that a lot of people have right now is, did Clemson self-destruct, or is Duke really a good team? And the next big question that I've for some reason seen pop up a lot is the Dabo dynasty dead? And let me tell you something. The Dabo dynasty is not necessarily about the amount of wins this football team gets, right? The Dabo dynasty is about the number of lives that he touches and brings to God. He has changed this football program. He has brought faith to these players. You see players going into the program thinking all about football and leaving the program thinking all about their relationship with God. So with that question, I say that no, I don't think the Dabo dynasty is dead. I think having it called a dynasty itself is kind of, a little lame, because it's not always about football. And I think we've kind of made that clear on this podcast. It's more about your relationship with God. Football is just an entertainment aspect, okay? And I think Dabo understands that. But in relation to this game, Clemson definitely self-destructed. I'll definitely agree with that. I think that we have a lot of 4- and 5-star athletes that played like 1- and 2-star athletes, if even a star at all. I mean, you have 2 fumbles in the red zone. Should have been up 21 to, I believe, 13. But they fumbled the ball. They fumbled the bag, as some would say, and it was just grueling to watch as a Clemson fan, because I know coming into the second half, you knew Dabo lit them up, but yet they just couldn't keep their hands on the ball. They couldn't secure it for some reason, and they just let that game go away from them. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Duke is definitely underrated. I think they are a good team. Do not get me wrong. But I definitely think that Clemson was overrated in the sense of how they've played so far, how they've performed. I think they have the talent there, but how they're playing right now, they were overrated. Go ahead, Mason.
I love the way you describe the Dabo dynasty. Like, it's not just about football. Football is entertainment, like we said. And look, this is a controversial thing, because a lot of people say, well, Dabo's not hired to make guys' relationship with God better. He's hired to coach football and get them into the NFL. 100, that's probably true. His job is to coach these players. But I would say that I don't really care. Like, to me, it's more important that these players are becoming better men and becoming, more like Jesus. That's what's more important to me. Obviously, you guys can have your own opinions about that, but to me, like, Joey's right. I think that is the center of the Dabo dynasty, right? But yes, when it comes to football, yeah, I got Clemson overrated. Just for now. I mean, I didn't think that I was really surprised, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but, the AP poll dropped Clemson all the way to 25. I didn't see that coming. I don't think really anybody did. But, that's what it's at, and what can you do? So, what do you got, Isaac?
Yeah, so I want to piggyback on that just real quick. That's a great point, Joey, and that's the truth. And Mason, to piggyback on what you said, is that Dabo's job here? I mean, yeah, like that's his job as a coach, but really the Great Commission is for him to make disciples. And so we can argue that point. Those who don't believe will argue that point. That's fine. But I think he does a really good job of both of those things, and I applaud Dabo for that as a man. I really do. I sincerely do. So with that said, looking at this game, I think that Clemson is just a little overrated. I think that here's what I think. I think Duke is underrated. I think Clemson's just a hair overrated, not by much, because they're still figuring it out. They're in similar places as Georgia right now. Cade Klubnik's trying to figure out at quarterback. They're trying to figure out how to make him a good quarterback and utilize Will Shipley. They used Shipley a lot Monday night. They really did. But at the same time, those 2 fumbles, we can say, well, is Duke really that good? I think they're a little underrated. They play with energy. They really were excited. Wallace Wade was rocking. But the thing is that they also just took advantage of turnovers. That's it. And we can argue, well, listen, I'm going to say this. If Clemson scores those 2 touchdowns, doesn't fumble, they win that game. That's a fact. So It was a great game. I think Duke's a little underrated. They play with energy. I think Mike Elko's changed the culture in Durham. But Dabo, the dynasty's not done. Clemson's just a little bit overrated. It was a great time, and I'm looking forward to seeing the ACC run that both of these guys make for the rest of the year.
Agreed. And I mean, real quick for the ACC, you got UNC, Duke, Clemson, Florida State. Hopefully NC State steps it back up. You got the ACC, making a big statement before these new teams. But real quick for Duke, I'm going to highly say this. I think Duke has a Heisman contender in Riley Leonard. I think he absolutely performed his butt off, and I think that game showed that, there really is talent. There's an arm and there's legs, and, dude can run, man. But, yeah, I agree with y'all. I agree.